don't make the same mistake as 75% of Australian property investors. Now, this video is to unravel the mistakes that majority of Australian investors do when investing in property. And what they normally all do is they buy all the properties in their own backyard. This is something that people don't think about, and they just buy where they can see, feel, touch the property, drive past the property, check up on making sure that the lawns are being mowed, driving past to see there's nothing wrong with the property, there's no rubbish at the front, they keep upkeeping the property. And when you do something like this, there's a lot of downfalls. And I want to talk about these things and making sure that you've got an understanding why you must diversify your property portfolio. So let's get into it. So you need to diversify your property portfolio. This is super important. Now, if you have everything in the one location, you're going to get stuck. There's going to be a lot of things involved. So let's talk about the very first one, budget. If you're priced out in a region or in a suburb or wherever you live in your own backyard, and you can't buy a house, because at Fresh Start Advisory, we buy purely houses. Why? You can add value to them by doing a subdivision, adding a granny flat, knocking down the property, doing a development, adding value to it. So doing the gardens, knocking down a wall and maybe opening up the living room, dining area, having an active approach of improving the property of the internals of the property. So cosmetic renovation, small, large, medium, whatever it may be. So you've got multiple things. When you have apartments, townhouses, you can only do so much to those properties. Okay, so you can't do a large number of value add components to the property. So you got a lot of opportunity when you have a house, especially on a big size block, and you can do a lot. And you got a goal of, say, 10 years from now, I want to do development. So when we're looking at investing, if a lot of investors will look and they might not be able to afford to buy a house in the market, and maybe they live in a capital city and they might live in an expensive location. I can't afford a house. It's over $1 million for a property in my location. So what they do, they go out there and they might buy an apartment or a unit or something that is not going to grow in value really significantly, and they just buy in their own backyard. They think, okay, that's what I can afford. I'm just going to go buy there. Or maybe they might buy in these outer fringe suburbs, these new estate areas where there's an oversupply of property, and they buy these properties as an investment. But when you've got multiple properties getting built into a region or like an estate, you're starting to really, really lower your chances for capital growth. And I guess not that, your rental market can be affected as well. And it all comes down to making sure you use the right fundamentals. So when it comes to your budget, if you're priced out of your market, you've got the opportunity. Australia is a big country. There's more than one place that grows, double-digit growth in a year for a long, sustainable time. And it's not Melbourne and Sydney that just get these, these growth waves. There's other places all over Australia. So looking into different markets, looking at the more affordable market where you can buy those houses that are in big size blocks, we can do something with the property. You can add value. You've got things like I call adding value to properties like insurance. So you can do stuff to it. You've got so many opportunities to increase your rent, increase the value of the property. So then you can use that to your advantage. So you can increase that rent for cash flow, so it helps you pay for your repayments, and then as well increasing the equity. So then you can use the property to release equity, use that equity, and go buy more property with. So looking into different regions, having a look at the budget. Okay, if you've got a budget of $400,000. Instead of buying a unit, maybe have a look into different markets. What houses, what economic drivers are driving this market? Once you've done your due diligence, you can buy a house in that market, say for $350,000 to $400,000, beautiful freestanding home. Okay, so let's get on to the next point. I'm rambling on too much. Pay less land tax. If you've got all your properties in the same state, you're going to be paying a large amount of land tax. Now, Victoria has a very large concession or land tax concession. So, that can be, very detrimental to your portfolio. For example, my auntie got a few properties paying $10,000 in land tax a year. That's a lot of money. And especially when you're buying houses, the larger the land, the more land tax you're paying. So you diversify your portfolio, buying in different states and territories, minimizes your land tax. Places like Queensland. And if the land is not valued over $600,000, you do not have to pay any land tax. That's how good is that? So if you buy a property, let's say in the more affordable market, for your personal situation, okay? And you buy the house, say, for $600,000. Now, the land's not worth $600,000. The land will be a lot cheaper than $600,000. The land is more value, of course, than the house. The house is a depreciating asset. The land is what is appreciating. But the land might be valued at maybe $400,000 or $450,000. So you don't have to pay any land tax. So building that portfolio into different states is going to help you minimize that land tax. Next thing, different market cycles. So people buy all in Melbourne, let's say, for example. You got someone, they're buying all the properties in Melbourne. It can be Sydney, it can be Adelaide, it can be anywhere. But some of those markets have similar growth cycles or where they're starting. And maybe some people might buy all their properties in the same suburb. That suburb there has only that portfolio only has one market cycle. And all the properties are all the same cycle. So if you bought your properties in different cycles, market cycles, and what I mean market cycles, there is a 5-year window of the boom phase. The first 5 years of a market, when it starts to grow and it has significant growth, those first 5 years, you're going to see double-digit growth. That's where you see the significant amount of growth. Then you're going to see a point after that. Not every market is treated equally. Excuse me. For that, I want to keep rolling. Not every market is treated equally. So what's going to happen is you're going to see them to just trend sideways or just slightly trending up, increasing, some can trend down. So let's just keep it simple. Every market, every state, every suburb has a different growth phase. So you want to have different properties in different states, territories, suburb, because they're starting their growth cycles at different times. While you have a large portfolio, and let's say you get to, say, let's keep it simple, 4 properties, and they're all diversified in different locations. You might have one in, say, Victoria. That Victoria property might be decreasing in value in a certain year, but then you might have one in South Australia, and that South Australia market is actually doing quite well. You might have one in Queensland, and it's just steadily trending up, and then you might have one in New South Wales, and it's actually doing very well, and it's trending, it's having great sustainable growth. So that's why you got to make sure you don't have all your eggs in one basket, like the old saying goes. Different driving economies. So kind of similar to market cycles. And when it comes to economies, you got to understand what is driving the economy at that moment. And so as we can see, this doesn't mean go invest in mining towns, because if you see some people rush to the herd, they're rushing to the herd when they see these, the mining sector is doing quite well. They go buy an investment property in a mining town. And guess what? Then the mining starts to drop off. What happens to those properties? They lose value. So this is understanding, I guess, when something starts to change in the economy, what is driving that economy? Is there more than 5 factors driving that economy? And what I mean by that, you want to make sure that you use something called ABS data, making sure that the economic drivers of what's driving that economy, making sure that it's not reluctant just on mining, but it's got healthcare, education system, is doing quite well. The retail sector is, performing quite well. Maybe manufacturing, agricultural. So having a look at this and making sure, that there's so many other driving factors of the economy. Next thing, I guess, property target. What happens is people might just buy in their portfolio all houses, or they might just buy maybe they might just buy all commercial property. Now you got to diversify the portfolio, because there's, like I said, peaks and troughs in different markets. If you buy all commercial, what happens if you've got all factories and then something happens to the workforce? Maybe that target audience for those commercial properties, which are factories, maybe starts to, you're finding difficult to find a tenant. Okay. As well, you can't have all houses in your portfolio, because you're going to need some assets like commercial or blocks of units to help pay down the debt and increase your income, increase your borrowing capacity as well. So when you have properties that are producing more income, like blocks of units, commercial property, which are very high yielding properties, what they do, they actually help your borrowing capacity and help pay down debt. So you need an equilibrium of properties in your portfolio. You can't just have all houses. You can't just have all commercial. You can't just have all blocks of units. You need to diversify. Okay. Houses produce really good capital growth and cash flow as well if you target those right properties. But then again, you need those cash flow assets that help you pay down debt, help you build cash reserves, and help you with your life sustainably, putting income in your pocket. Next thing, I guess, property strategy. People do not have a property strategy, and what they do is they go out there and they just start buying property. Now, do you have a plan? put a plan in place. So this strategy can come to, what is your goal? What are you trying to achieve? How much passive income? What's your goal? What's your end target? When do you want to retire? Once you kind of got to understand what you're wanting to achieve, and we have a 10-year plan spreadsheet that we design for our clients that gives them a roadmap to achieving their financial goals. If you like access to that, please just reach out and we can give you a little bit more information. But once you have a plan, let's talk about, I guess, some of the strategies that involve development, granny flat, subdivision, cosmetic renos. This is something to take in consideration. Why? Because if we don't look long term and we just look short term, in this moment, you might just be a passive investor. At this moment, when you're first investing, you might be a passive investor, but you might change 5 years down the track, or maybe a year down the track, whatever it may be. You become more sophisticated. You start learning. You start developing new ideas. You start learning about property more. You start enjoying the process, and you really, really start to think outside the square. And you say, you know what? Let's buy this property and let's make sure we want to do a development 5 years from now. And let's do that with all our properties, even if I don't have the audacity, sorry, not the audacity, wrong word. Even if I don't have the motivation to do that, but I still got the potential to do something like that. Why? It makes it more appealing as well when it comes to if I have to resell the property as well. And it just gives you a reassurance. You might get to a point in your time and with your portfolio is doing quite well, and you say, you know what? I'm actually going to knock down this property. I've got 5. I'm going to knock down number one. I'm going to do a development. I'm going to do that. It gives me an opportunity. And then, you know what? I might do rinse and repeat for all the others, because now I'm in a really good position. I've got the opportunity to do something like that. Or you can add a granny flat. Putting another storage apartment at the back of the property, and you can make an extra second income coming in from the property. So there's all different things you understand when it comes to property, diversifying it. I guess opportunity cost, and what I mean by this is people will wait and try and time the market, and they'll just see what's going on. And what will happen is they'll wait, and they'll buy when the market starts to hit a peak. They're just watching and procrastinating of different times of the market. And what happens is, like I said, there's a 5-year window. They've probably been waiting for 5 years, and they're thinking that the property market is going to drop, or they think it's trending sideways, and they're seeing it's how good the market is performing. And they get in and they jump in at the wrong time. And it costs them so much money because they haven't done the right due diligence. And they've come back to market timing. You got to make sure that you're understanding what cycle your property is in, or your market is in, I should say. So that is something to take into consideration. So you want to make sure that you understand about how important it is diversifying your portfolio. Super critical, like I said, because if you don't, you're going to be paying more money. Your property portfolio is going to underperform, and there's a whole bunch of risks involved. Okay, so this is super important. Okay, you want to make sure that you have your properties in different locations, in different areas. And when I will talk about as well driving economics, different driving economies. You don't want to have all your properties in the similar economies as each other as well. You want to have some of your properties in different locations. For example, some locations might have really, really high resources in renewable energy, maybe in the defense force sector, maybe in retail, and maybe in manufacturing. Then you don't want to go to a similar market where it has the similar things, because if something happens in those sectors, that property market can have an effect. Because the property market, like I said, it's not, there's a lot of jigsaw pieces that fit to it. So what this will make more sense if you go into a different market where maybe it's driven by the healthcare, maybe it's driven by education, maybe it's driven by administration and other professional companies, maybe it's driven by construction. And now these are things that you start to look at those sectors, and they're performing, and they're doing quite well in different periods of stages of life. So you see the things of different economies, different shifts in economies, different, I guess. And what I mean by this as well, because when these economies and these sectors are performing at different times, it can be because of, I guess, government rebates or government spending, and these things will influence the market. That's why you want to have your properties in different sectors that are performing with different economies, diversifying. So you want to diversify the portfolio from all different spectrums. Property's not one size jigsaw puzzle. It's all different things that put it together to make it the property valuable and what grows in value. So hopefully you got a lot of clarity from this. People don't talk about this. You don't hear about this in books. You don't hear about this in podcasts. This is something that is valuable information and to take into consideration and look at property from a different angle. And I'm trying to unravel all these things so I can make you a better investor. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share this video with us. That would be the most important thing. If you just like, subscribe, and just leave us a view so we understand if we know we're doing the right job for you. So thank you for watching this video.